Hi, Mystery Knox listeners. Welcome back to the podcast. For today's episode, we are going to dive into the legend of a hidden treasure, lost amongst the beautiful but mysterious Superstition Mountains in Arizona. This tale has captivated the imaginations of treasure hunters for decades. This is the case of the Dutchman's lost gold. So, Mary, what are you drinking today?
I got some coffee and cold pizza.
Cold pizza.
Cold pizza.
Cold pizza. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Very delicious.
It's okay. I mean, yeah, it's a little bit more doughy than I would have liked, but
yeah,
it's food, and I need it with my Excedrin that I just took.
Yes. Kill that headache.
Yeah. What about you?
I have some coffee, some water. You know, the huge.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think? So, without giving anything away, of course. What did you think about this case?
I don't know. Like, it's not like any other cases. I didn't really... Like, I was interested in it, but I'm not invested in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Because it's like a lost mine of gold. You know, I've heard it a lot of times, and you hear all these stories about such things, and it's like, is it there or isn't? I don't like that.
I don't like that.
It's like a get-rich story, and then just kidding, you know?
Yeah. Well, what I found interesting, which seems to always happen to us, is I was like, okay, this is going to be pretty simple, you know?
Yeah.
A simple legend that we talk about. No. The more we dug, I was like, all right, why does this always happen?
Yeah.
It was just more and more and more information about just stuff that goes on and on about, but it all comes back to the mine. Yeah,
I do like that.
It was interesting, yeah.
You only hear what's on the surface, but then you think you know the whole story. It's like MTV. You think you know, but you have no idea.
Yeah, you have no idea.
Yeah. So I like that aspect of it. Like, you hear about this lost Dutchman and his gold and everything, but the more you go into it, it's like, oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, there's like so much more to the story than you think originally.
Yeah. But like for me, like a Southwest, Western, so I've never been interested in that kind of thing, so that also is like a pullback for me where it's like, oh, okay. But I don't know. Like, my dad's very interested in all that sort of thing, and I'm just like,
Yeah, so is my father-in-law. He's very interested in that stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I agree, though. I've never really been into, like, Westerns or anything like that. So when we first were going to do this, I was like, okay, you know, it's fine. It's Arizona. You know, we needed a case for Arizona. So yeah. I was like, all right, let's just do it. But yeah.
Because I know I was worried about, I was like, is this going to be a long enough episode? Because
yeah,
it just seemed like one and done. But no, there's more to it.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad there was like way more information than I originally thought. And it made it, to me, it made it definitely more interesting.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm glad because I was like, oh, it's just another one of those stories that, you know, you hear, not to say back in the day, but, you know, that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, I guess we'll talk about theories later, but yeah, like, it does stir up, like, is it or isn't it?
With that being said, let's get to the case. For more than 120 years, the legend of the Lost Dutchman's Mine has been one of the best treasure tales in the history of the American West. It's not only shrouded in mystery, but the mine is said to have a curse upon it, which has supposedly led to a number of strange deaths and people mysteriously going missing when attempting to locate the mine. The biggest draw to the mine for most isn't to prove the curse is real, or for the thrill of the adventure itself. No, the biggest draw for most people is the promise of lost gold. Superstition Mountains, located inside of the Tonto National Forest, towers over 6,000 feet above the Sonoran Desert and just 40 miles from the greater Phoenix area. The, quote, superstitions are said to get their name from the Eskimo Odom people who told stories about strange sounds emanating from the mountains, people disappearing, mysterious deaths, and an ongoing fear of the mountains, end quote. The White Mountain Apache believed the superstitions thundered because the mountains are the home of the thunder gods. Quote, "To this day, people claim they sometimes hear rumblings coming from the superstitions that sound like rolling thunder. Geologists believe the sound comes from the seismic activity resonated by the canyon walls." End quote. And a little fun fact, geologists say the superstitions were formed by the intensive volcanic activity that took place in Arizona millions of years ago. Very interesting.
You know, I would like to go more into, like, Native American lore with that.
Me too.
Like, because, you know, they always have these interesting stories of, like, their ancestors or how things came to be. And I think the superstitions is definitely one of them. Or if, like, you can actually hear that stuff. Because you hear about this, like, through text, but to actually be there, I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, that would be really cool. Long before there was any gold found in the Superstition Mountains, the area itself was cloaked in mystery. In 1540, the Spanish arrived, and at that time the region was inhabited by the Apaches, and possibly the Pima tribe. They considered the Superstition Mountains sacred ground. Not surprisingly, the Spanish did not care about the Apaches' customs and way of life, and they only wanted to find the legendary, quote, 7 golden cities of Cibola, end quote. I won't go into great detail about the 7 golden cities of Cibola, but if you're unaware of the story, in 1536 there was a shipwreck, and according to the story, 3 companions spent a good 8 years wandering through what is now the American Southwest, such as Arizona and New Mexico.
See, at that point, not to cut in, but, like, at that point, how do you know when to stop?
I don't know.
You know, it's like, oh, I've heard of this, and it may have been found, or maybe it was found, supposedly, but they have gold, and oh yeah, it came from here. But, like, at what point do you just stop and say, like, we're not going to find it? Because
we're done, yeah.
There's also that thought of, but what if we do? Mm-hmm. Like, what if tomorrow we wander here and it's there, you know?
And then we find it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, what if we gave up one day early?
Yeah. And, like, someone came behind you and went that route that you were going to take, but you're like, now we're calling it, you know? And then they find it. Oh, my God.
Exactly. But, like, 8 years. That's crazy.
Yeah. No, I've heard people going more than that in search of whatever the hell, you know?
God.
And I hate that theory
me.
Of, yeah, like, what if you stop now? Or what if you keep going? What if? I hate that. I really do.
Yeah, because that could drive a person crazy.
I know. And it's like, I think sometimes you just have to give up on whatever it is. Because sometimes when you do, you then find whatever it is you're looking for.
These explorers were told a story of incredible land with 7 large cities where, quote, the streets were lined with goldsmith shops, houses of many stories and doorways studded with emerald and turquoise, end quote. The Viceroy, Antonio de Mendoza of New Spain, which is now Mexico, was anxious to explore this new land, so in 1539 he sent explorers to go and find out if the story was true. When the explorer returned, he did report that some of the companions were killed by hostile Native Americans, but he also spoke about the 7 cities of Cibola. Now, back to 1540 and the Spanish not caring about the Apache's ownership of the land. According to sources, the Apache apparently told the Spaniards that there was gold in the mountain range, and that made the Spaniards even more intent on exploring. However, the Apache refused to help the Spanish. They did warn the Spaniards that if they were to explore and trespass on their sacred ground, they would experience, quote, tremendous suffering and horrible deaths, end quote. As the Spaniards explored, they immediately began to mysteriously vanish, only to be found later, some with mutilated bodies, including decapitation. Taking this as a sign, the Spaniards fled. For hundreds of years, explorers came and went, always trying to find the lost gold. Some actually did manage to find gold, though it's not known if it was gold from the lost Dutchman's mine. However, as the years passed, people kept exploring, and as a result, the Apaches' anger and resentment grew for the people trespassing on their sacred land. Eventually, they started to prey on the explorers. Okay, so here's where we get into the fact blurring with fiction part. In researching this legend, there are so many stories that people believe are true, but are in fact not. Or at least, not fully true. Author Bird Howell Granger wrote, quote, Fact and fiction blend in the tales, end quote. But with all the many tales, 62 at some point, there are in fact 3 main stories that are the main elements of the legend. Another author and researcher, Robert Blair, stated, quote, that there are kernels of truth at the heart of each of these 3 main stories, though the popular story is often badly garbled from the actual account. Other theories have materialized that speculate the mine is buried at the bottom of Apache or Roosevelt Lake, end quote. In 1977, Granger identified 62 variants of the Lost Dutchman story. Some of the variations are minor, but others are substantial, casting the story in very different light from the other versions. One of these main stories is the Dr. Thorne story. In 1870, an army doctor named Abraham Thorne was given an amazing opportunity by the Apache. He had been helping the tribe, healing their sick, and they came to respect him. Dr. Thorne was afforded an opportunity to be led to the gold in the superstitions. However, there was a catch. He would have to be blindfolded for the entire trip. He accepted the conditions and was led to the mine. According to legendsofamerica.com, quote, he was allowed to remove the blindfold. Thorne found himself in a canyon where a large, unusual rock pinnacle loomed to the south. The Apache let him pick up as much as he could before the doctor was again blindfolded for the return trip. Thorne sold the ore for some $6,000, making him wealthy, end quote. Which was, I forgot to look it up, so that was 1870. Let's just see how much that would be today. Whoa! Good God. Okay, so that $6,000 in 1870 is equivalent to about $140,000 today.
What?
Yeah. However, sometime later, and we're not sure of how much later this was, Dr. Thorne got greedy, like most people do. He decided he would find the mine again, and this time take some friends. Now, according to the legend, they actually found the mine's location. Dr. Thorne and his friends filled up their saddlebags, and then they started back on the return trip to Phoenix, but they were discovered by the Apache, and they were killed. Okay, so here's the real story, according to Blair, of Dr. Thorne. There really was a doctor named Thorne, but he lived in New Mexico in the 1860s. He did state he was taken captive by the Navajos in 1854. He allegedly ended up discovering a, quote, gold vein while in captivity.
That sounds gross.
Doesn't it?
Like gold, like what? I mean, I kind of have an idea of what it is, but what exactly?
Yeah, I didn't know what it was either, so I looked it up. So, according to livescience.com, quote, gold can be deposited in many ways, but gold veins are a miner's dream. Solidified streams of high-grade mineral, ripe for the picking, these veins form in rock fractures, but their formation has always stubbornly eluded explanation, end quote.
I guess it's better than, like, gold crevice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But still, it's like gold vein.
Gold vein. Yeah. It's not the best name, I don't think. But it's really weird when I was, like, looking it up. Like, they still, to this day, kind of don't know how it happens.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's interesting.
So
the mysteries of the world.
Yeah. Maybe, like, just a mineral oxidation.
I don't know.
I'm just saying words.
You sound smart, Mary.
Well, you know, it's hard. It took a lot for me to get there. No.
Oh, God. In 1858, Thorne told his story to some soldiers, and these soldiers set out to find the gold, but had no success. Eventually, over the decades, this true account got molded into the legend that you hear today. Alright, folks. We are going to go get another coffee, and when we return, we'll talk in detail about who the Dutchman actually was.
So who was the Dutchman? Jacob Waltz was born near Württemberg, Germany, sometime between 1808 and 1810. The exact date of his birth wasn't documented with baptismal records. In fact, there hasn't been any record of Waltz prior to coming to the States. His early life isn't documented, nor was it noted of any formal education or records that proved he was a graduated mining engineer, as claimed by some writers. Quote, according to the document, on October 1st, 1839, Jacob Waltz sailed on the ship Obler from the port of Bremen to America, arriving at the port of New Orleans on November 17th, 1839. Waltz's name appears 97th on the list and his age is given as 28. His hometown was Horb, Württemberg, Germany, according to the ship's manifest. End quote. It's believed that, quote, Waltz traveled overland to California around 1850, end quote, and spent the next 11 years working in the gold fields of California. Quote, Waltz's name appeared in some early California census records, and he did file papers to become a citizen of the United States in the Los Angeles County Courthouse. He became a naturalized citizen of the United States on July 19, 1861, 30 years prior to his death in Phoenix. The events surrounding Waltz's life during his 27 years in Arizona Territory is what created his legacy. End quote. Waltz and his partner Jacob Weiser worked the mine and allegedly hid one or more caches of gold in the superstitions. Most stories place the gold in the vicinity of Weaver's Needle, a well-known landmark. Weiser was killed by Apaches, or according to some, by Waltz himself. Now that I did hear, like a mixture of who killed him, like this dude, yeah.
Interesting.
Like they found the gold, and obviously they didn't want to split it, so. Or maybe, I don't know. But that would be an interesting story right there to hear more about. But I didn't really find too much about it. Other than
well, I guess we could talk about this later, but I was going to ask you, so if he killed Weiser, did he ever admit to that, like on his deathbed or anything?
No, not that. No, it was just the location of the mine, yeah.
Gotcha.
Quote, in failing health, Jacob Waltz moved to Phoenix and died some 20 years later, in 1891. He supposedly described the mine's location to Julia Thomas, a neighbor who took care of him prior to his death. Neither she nor dozens of other seekers in the years that followed were able to find the lost Dutchman's mine. Subsequent searchers have sometimes met with foul play or even death, contributing to the superstition and legend that surrounded these mountains. End quote. Final clues were given to Julia Thomas, and Reinhard Petrasch is how we're seeing his name. We don't really know.
Yes.
But most of the clues were given to Julia on where the mine could be found. The only thing is that, while clues were given, and mainly to Julia, both had been celebrating or drinking a little too much and, quote, their minds were a little foggy, end quote, to remember what exactly was said. Quote, they would later regret when they were wandering aimlessly in the mountains east of Phoenix, end quote. Quote, a number of other people were supposed to have known the mine's location, or even to have worked it. Numerous maps have surfaced over the years only to become lost or misplaced when interested parties pressed for facts. Men who claimed to have found the mine were unable to return to it, or some disaster occurred before they could file a claim, all adding to the lore of a, quote, lost mine, end quote. The quest for the Dutchman's lost gold has proven perilous. The unforgiving terrain, extreme weather conditions, and the mysterious aura surrounding the Superstition Mountains have claimed the lives of many who dared venture too deep. One such life was James A. Cravey. He set out to find the lost gold in 1947 and perished. We actually have this newspaper article detailing his death right here. It states, read article.
Read it, damn it.
We actually have the newspaper article detailing his death, and which can also be found in the blog. It states, or it headlines, Hikers Find Man's Bones, in Mesa, February 21st. Discovery of the skeleton of James A. Cravey, retired photographer who disappeared in the rugged Superstition Mountains last June while seeking the legendary Lost Dutchman mine, was reported tonight by 2 Arizona visitors. They are Captain R.F. Perrin, U.S. Army, retired, and Lieutenant Commander Wilton F. Clements of Chicago, guests at the Sunset Trail Ranch 11 miles east of here. The 2 men reported finding the skeleton of a man, minus the head, late this afternoon, 2.5 miles south of Weaver's Needle, while on an all-day hike in the area. Because of the late hour, they did not search for the skull, but brought the man's wallet back to Sunset Trail Ranch. Identification was made through papers in the wallet. Sheriff Cal Boyes?
Cal Cowboys.
Cowboys!
Cowboys.
Dude, this is totally fiction. There is no one.
This is so weird. Anyway, go on. Or
Like-
maybe we were saying the last name wrong. Maybe it's like Bowie's or something.
Yeah. I'm saying
I don't
cowboys.
know. Anyway. Okay, go on.
Sheriff Cowboys is what we think his name is. I don't know. Bowie's? Okay.
Could be.
Yeah. Was notified at Phoenix. Boys said Sheriff Lynn Early of Pinal County will organize a party to pick up the skeleton tomorrow morning. Cravey is the 20th person known to have lost his life looking for the fabled lost mine in the superstitions. One of the most widely publicized deaths was that of Adolph Ruth of Washington, D.C., whose skull containing a bullet hole was found in 1931 by Harvey Mott, managing editor of the Arizona Republic, who was on an archaeological expedition sponsored by the newspaper. Cravey hired a helicopter to fly him to the superstitions last June. That was the last time he was seen. Several weeks later, the helicopter returned with a searching officer. After a search, they located what appeared to be Cravey's camp, not far from the spot where the helicopter had originally set him down. There was no indication that any of his supplies had been used. And that's the article. I thought there'd be more to that, but, I mean, that's still an interesting little tidbit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting that he was found close to Weaver's Needle.
Mm-hmm.
Which is, as we talked about.
Despite the dangers, the allure of unimaginable wealth continues to draw people to the superstitions, keeping the legend alive through the generations. Alright, so what do you think about this whole... What do you think?
Man.
Do you think it's real, the mine, or it's just another sort of lore? To keep... I think it's weird. Not weird. I think it's kind of interesting, though. Why? If it's fake... Why? Like, what are you trying to keep people away, sort of thing? Or...
I
mean, there's so many theories, I think, about
There's
this,
so many theories.
on whether it could
I
be...
honestly... Okay, this is what I think maybe happened. Mm-hmm. I think a long time ago, there was gold in the mine or in the superstitions. And someone found it. And whether that be the Apaches or whoever. And then I think maybe the wrong people found it. And then they told people, and then that just set off a whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I'm talking about way back, like, before the Spanish came.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then people just kept... But see, what I think is that it's not as big as people say it is. And there's not as much gold as people say it is.
Yeah.
I think maybe it was just like a little bit of gold or a little bit of those minerals, whatever, the gold vein that people talk about. Mm-hmm. And then it just kind of blew up into this whole legend, and people just keep trying to go and find it because, one, it's interesting. Mm-hmm. Like, if you're a hiker and you're a treasurer or gold seeker, like, this is going to be super cool for you, and you're going to want to go and explore and try to find it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I just don't think it's as big as everybody makes it out to be.
That's what she said. And then, like...
Oh, that was great.
But,
So what do you think?
I honestly think it had to stem from something. Like you were saying, there is gold there.
Something.
Yeah, there was something there. But not anymore. Like, I mean, if anyone knows, once you find something good like that, you aren't going to be telling people. Mm-mm. And like... When that guy passed, I don't think he had much in his account or much to his name anyway. What, like $1,200 at the time? I could be mistaken about the actual number, but maybe at the time it was a lot. But like, I'm pretty sure. But you would think if you found all this gold, you would have a little bit more.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah, but in general, I think maybe there was something there. But I don't know. I
don't think there's anything there anymore. No. I honestly don't. Yeah. I feel like at this point, all of it would have been taken, and like...
And it might as well be, I'm pretty sure. And that's why no one has found anything.
And yeah, exactly. And that's why people keep trying to find it, and they're not finding anything. I feel like because everything was taken out that was there.
Yeah.
Now, whether this opens up a whole nother theory is like, well, did the people who took it out, did they put it somewhere else? Like,
yes, I was just going to say that.
Because
I was just thinking
heard about that.
Yeah.
That I don't know.
That would make sense. Like, take
yes.
it out, move it to a different location, and say, yes,
exactly.
This is where I found it. Well, that's where you found it, but that's not where it is now. Which is smart, if that's the case.
That is smart, yeah. But, yeah, I don't think there's anything there anymore.
I'll be surprised if someone comes across it.
I'd be shocked. I really
in that location, but, like, maybe in a different location if they... And that's what I think. I want to say it's in a different spot. Like, if people venture out to different locations, maybe they'll come across it. But, yeah, I don't think wherever it's said to be is still there.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so there was one big part of the story that we left out. Because when I did more research on it, I found out that it was just, it was just another legend. It might have started off as kind of true, kind of like the Dr. Thorne story. But then it just got blown up into a legend. But basically, what happened was there's a story about a man named Peralta, and back in the 1740s, he apparently, according to the legend, was given a land grant. That basically he owned the superstitions and a bunch of land around the superstitions. And the legend goes that the Peralta family, over the years, they really didn't go into the mine because they knew that the Apaches would hurt them, or, they were not...
That was more or less like
happy about it.
Right?
Yeah, it was their territory. So apparently they very minimally went over there over the years. And then what happened is, like, I think it was in the 1840s, so about 100 years after this happened, 4 of the descendants of the Peralta family ended up going into the mine. They were like, yep, we're just going to go. We don't care about, the Apaches and blah, blah, blah. So they went and didn't find anything. And somehow they made it back. Like, they didn't get hurt by the Apaches. But then the next year, one of the guys from that whole 4 wanted to go back. And the other 3 didn't. And so he went back himself. And I believe he ended up getting killed. By the Apaches. That's how the legend goes.
Because I know there's an area up there that it's known for, it's like the Peralta Massacre or something.
Yes, yeah.
But we don't, in all the resources that we come across, it's not really mentioned, and that's why we didn't want to include it. But we're obviously mentioning it now just in case people are, you left this out. Well, this is why. Exactly.
Because it was a whole... According to the research, the sources, it was a whole made-up lie. Now, an amazing made-up lie, because people kind of are still falling for it at some point. But by this man named Revis, I believe was his name, right? Revis. Hold on, let me double-check that was his name.
And it's also said that Waltz got the location of it from Peralta.
Yeah, exactly.
But... Because he even says, like, I didn't discover this, but I sure as hell went there, I think is what... not word for word, but I think is what he said. Well, I didn't discover it, but I took advantage to go find it.
Okay, so there was a man named James Revis, and he is the one who apparently made up this whole story about Peralta and him getting the land grant, etc., etc. The reason he did this is because he was trying to pass off a land grant that he had and say that it was basically part of the Peralta land grant so that he would have access to all of that land. And they eventually found out and he got caught, but that's where the whole Peralta story comes from. And there's more. You could go and research this yourselves, and you will find so much about it, which I highly recommend you do if you're into this story, because there's just so much.
Yeah. Like we were saying, how when we went into this, we didn't think it would be this much.
Right.
Just like every other case, every other story.
Exactly.
Every other
I feel like we say that in every episode.
We do.
We didn't realize.
I think we do. But that's the thing. It's like you think you know, or you think it's just, some menial thing, but there's actually more to it, which is kind of, cool. to see that there's so much more about it, and people like glaze over it, like, oh yeah, there's these mountains with gold, and that's it. It's like, oh, okay, and then the more you go into it, obviously you find out more information, and I guess that's the appeal of it, you know.
Yeah,
like pirates' gold. You never know.
Exactly.
But there is that curiosity of possibly.
Yes. It is interesting. I mean, so I actually talked to my father-in-law about the case a little bit, because he's very into history and Southwestern stuff and research, and he lives in the area over there, and he was telling me that I guess they have now closed it off. So, like, people can't actually go and search for the mine anymore because it's dangerous. You know, people die. They still die to this day looking for the mine. So, according to him, he said that they have now closed it off to try to prevent that. I don't know. I'm sure people still probably sneak in.
Oh yeah, it's just like the what is it? The hiking trail in Hawaii, the staircase to heaven.
Oh yeah. I've heard about that.
Is it staircase to heaven? I forget, but it's this staircase that, you know, it used to be a famous sort of hiking trail, and then people they were getting injured and whatnot and all these things, and so they closed it off, and they left like a little warning thing, like, no, don't go there. But people are still going to go. But it's basically, it's your own thing. If it's not on us, it's on you. Right. Which I think has applied to the superstitions as well.
Yeah, I agree. Anything else you want to say?
I'm hungry. No.
I need a nap.
I need some coffee. More coffee. No, I think I'm good. The mystery of the Dutchman's lost gold persists, shrouded in the secrets of the Superstition Mountains. Whether the mine is a product of folklore or a hidden reality waiting to be uncovered, the legend endures, inspiring adventurers to explore the untamed wilderness in search of one of the greatest treasures in American history. However, explorer beware, for you could be the next victim of the Dutchman's lost gold. Alright, Mystery Knox listeners, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this case, so send us a message on Instagram or YouTube at Mystery Knox Podcast, on Twitter at Mystery Knox Pod, or send us a voice message on Spotify. The link can be found in the description. A list of our sources and photos mentioned in this episode can be found on our blog at mysteryknoxpodcast.wordpress.com. Your support is always appreciated, so if you've enjoyed our podcast, please let us know by giving us a rating, a review, and a follow on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Google, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. We'll see you on our next episode, and remember, stay weird, stay curious.
That was not a good one.
It's like you're doing this how I would, which is like,
I know,
running out of air.
It's like running out of air. Trespassing. I can't breathe. All right, third time's a charm.
Yeah.
All right.